And with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to introduce today's speaker. If I can pull up my other notes here. So we got Oliver Cannell, right? Is that how I say it?
That'll do.
Okay.
That's good.
That'll do. He gave me a few options to choose from this morning. So, but you probably know Oliver from IC360. So Oliver actually came from a product design and mechanical engineering design background. First started with HTML back in the late 90s. And then after working with Motorola UK for a while, he ended up working for a design agency and established IC360 in 1999. So of course, I think a lot of you guys know they are silver sponsor or silver partners with ExpressionEngine. They've been sponsors in some form or fashion of EE conference for quite some time. Big support to the community. Everybody knows him for his dashboards, which he's going to talk about today, and we're excited to hear about. But IC360 itself, they're customer service driven, where the experience count, customer service that matters, and high production values that make a difference. Everything's designed and built from scratch at IC360. Of course, quality matters, and standing out from the crowd really does make a difference. Most of what they do is ExpressionEngine. Oliver told me ExpressionEngine has given him the power to create above and beyond what he'd normally be able to achieve. So again, huge part of the community, always there to help out. Just a great guy from all my interactions with him and everything I've ever heard about him. Never heard an ill word spoken of Oliver or his team over at IC360. So look forward to hearing from him today. And Oliver, I am going to jump off, but of course I'll be around if you need anything. Just give a yell out, and I'll hop back on if you have any technical difficulties or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
But I will pass it off to you. Thank you for being here, Oliver, and thank you for all you guys attending today.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, let me just make sure I've got everything up that we need. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen okay.
Yep,
so,
we see it fine.
Great, nice one. Okay, so yeah, just thanks to everyone at the ExpressionEngine conference and ExpressionEngine Community Association for inviting me to give this presentation. It means a big deal to me, so thank you very much. It's a great opportunity. So today I'm going to be giving you a brief introduction on how we can use ExpressionEngine to build custom dashboards for controlling and editing entry data, whether for SEO purposes, managing customer orders, controlling project workflows, or simply providing a more customized data entry experience over and above ExpressionEngine's own control panel tools. So I live and work in the UK near Bath and Salisbury, for those who know it. Started IC360 in 1999. Originally started as a virtual tour photography business, an interactive media, offering additional design, branding, and web services as well. But now mostly web design and build, with the usual hosting, branding design, and website growth services included. And obviously ExpressionEngine is a big part of that now. So why did I originally get into building sites with ExpressionEngine? Originally, I was hiring freelance developers to create and build custom CMS systems for clients as they needed them. But this was expensive, and most sites still only needed hard-coded HTML using good old Dreamweaver, for those that remember it. It soon became apparent that everyone should have a CMS for their website, so I started looking at the options available. And after some research back in 2008, I found ExpressionEngine version 1.6, paid the $250 fee to get on board with my first license. As a web designer rather than developer, I didn't want to get into anything beyond basic PHP or JavaScript, and that's still the case generally speaking. He has enabled me to create more complex sites myself without needing to hire coders and developers quite so much, whilst knowing I can create whatever is needed, all from within the cozy comfort of the ExpressionEngine interface and toolset. I class myself as a 1 out of 10 level developer, PHP, JavaScript, jQuery, but in the client's eyes, ExpressionEngine can make me look like a 10, and who doesn't want to be a 10? So where then? Along came e-commerce sites with their additional complexities, chasing the SEO unicorns and higher results-driven expectations from clients. 9 times out of 10, EE has been able to meet those requirements right out of the box. With help from various add-ons, of course, some specially coded bits and bobs, and occasionally there are some golden opportunities which EE hasn't been able to cater for, to help clients get more from their data, to be more efficient and effective, and to help them grow their business. So ExpressionEngine is a superb tool to manage website data and output it to screen for the client admin and the end user. But there are limitations in what it offers, both from a toolset point of view and usability. Sometimes the interface isn't quite simple enough to help users see the wood from the trees. Sometimes the tools aren't quite what's required for a particular need. Sometimes these use features are aimed more at developers, coders, and designers, and less so at data managers, website users, and business owners. So basically, for some users, sometimes less is most definitely more, and simplicity is most definitely creates efficiency. So why not use ExpressionEngine in the background and harness the power of channel forms to create unique end-focused tools to manage data, to control day-to-day workflow without fuss or overcomplication. This is where I found dashboards have become a real thing. So this started off with a client running an Carthrop e-commerce site. They had 1,000+ products, which is still my biggest site today in terms of product numbers. But each of those products also had multiple variants and options within them. Like lengths of shelving, colors of product, that kind of thing. But every year they wanted to increase the prices, maybe sometimes more than once a year. But there are no tools that I'm aware of in EE to achieve this. And the client didn't want to spend hours editing the prices of all their products because it could just take days or longer. This could be done programmatically in the database using some kind of SQL or PHP, but who knows how to do that. So I decided to create a price editor dashboard with help from a little bit of JavaScript and jQuery and help from the code as well. So they could perform bulk price edits on all products whenever they wanted. So it's quite basic, very grey, very boring, but it got the job done. Built using channel entries loop, just outputting each product one at a time in each row, and then within that a channal form, so that you can edit whichever fields you wanted to, and then some JavaScript and jQuery on top of that just to make it all work magically. So that's a screenshot, but I've got a working version here. So this is the basic tool. As you can see, hopefully it's clear enough for you. Each product is on a row. It shows basic things like the product name, date it was last edited, the ID number, and then within that we've got each of the product price options as defined by the Carthrop price field. So it's possible to edit any product one at a time if you wanted to, but the beauty of this is it's possible to obviously edit the whole page in one go and then hit the update all of these products button on the right hand side. So for example, if I wanted to increase all prices by 5%, hit the calculate button there, it should go through and update each of these by 5%. Or if I make it 10%, it should notch them up a bit more. There you go. And then I can just hit the update and that'll update all the products. It's clunky, but it works, and obviously saves a shed load of time. So that was a really useful tool for them. The other advantage or option on here was there's a category which you can't see for some reason. At the top, there's a category drop down. So you can filter by category and just edit those particular ones. So you could do it in chunks or sections. So this tool, one tool, was kind of planted a seed in my mind. Which made me realize, with ExpressionEngine running quite literally as the engine, what else could be achieved using channel form based dashboards? So managing a site's SEO potential, for example, is quite simple within ExpressionEngine, using the use of custom fields to edit page content and meta tags. But sometimes it can get hard to get your head around all the site pages in one go, without lots of bouncing around between editing entries, previewing the front end in browser tabs, so you can make sure you check what you've created. What about if this can be managed from a bird's eye view by providing a bigger overview? This is where an SEO dashboard will come in really useful. So I created this fairly simple one for a soap, online soap retailer. They've got obviously static content pages like the About Us page, but then they've also got product collections, product categories, and obviously the products themselves. So those have been separated into individual tabs. So let me just bring that one up and show you. Here we go. So here we go. We've got the static content, collections, product categories, and products. And basically, again, same theory, just output each product, each entry, one per row, selected the entry fields that are critical, that we're interested in, and this just sort of allows you to basically view everything from a bird's eye view. So you can see the meta title, how it relates to the real title, whether it's auto generated, it's using the same logic that's in the template, or whether it's a manually typed piece of information. So that's great. Obviously, from here you still have to go into each entry to edit it. So why not then bring that forward? Let's go to the static content one. So here you can see we've now got a channel form on each product on each row, where you can actually edit and then update. So again, you can see the whole lot from a bird's eye view. You can edit, update on the fly, and save a lot of time, save bouncing around. So that was for SEO. Let's go back. So even outside of customer-facing websites and intranet sites, ExpressionEngine is a great tool for running a database for a business or an organization. So there was one of my clients is a counseling charity who deal with local people and their counseling issues. So they needed a database to manage the data for these clients, and so using a dashboard, I've basically been able to create a tool set for them that's simple and clean and sits on top of ExpressionEngine, and where they can manage their clients' data. So by storing each client as an ExpressionEngine entry, it's created a simple, clean, and branded dashboard for the staff to use. I don't have a live version of that, obviously, because it's confidential information, but hopefully you can see from the screenshot. There we go. So when you edit the client record, you can see it's broken down into tabs. It's basically an entry editor. There's nothing overly sophisticated about it, but it's just presented in a slightly more useful way for them. It gives them the information they need arranged in columns that are relevant, in tabs that are relevant, and it makes it easy for anyone to use that's non-technical, without having to go into ExpressionEngine. And the advantage of this particular tool is there's an export Excel CSV option on here. So if they wanted to do further manipulation on all the data, they could export it without too much of a problem. So now, for a slightly more advanced dashboard, using Cartthrob and channel forms behind the scenes, I've created a dashboard for a construction company, construction and building, and this uses Cartthrob's notification system. So for when entry statuses are changed, we can take things that it will send out emails based on how a project is proceeding. So this is for internal use for them, but it could be used for controlling interaction with outside customers or suppliers, for example. So this one works by taking a quote inquiry form on the front end website. So if a customer wants to say to a builder, like, I need to build an extension to my house, or I need to manage some rental properties, they could fill in the quote form. It would come into the dashboard here as an inquiry, and then the admin staff could can manage it as a project right from initial inquiry through the works and quoting process and right to the sort of completion of the project. So I do have, here we go. So this is obviously a mock-up, but it's a live working tool. So here you can see each project or job is a separate row. It's got traffic light controlled red, amber, green settings based on the duration, the current status, or for the next phase requirements. It also changes color based on the date of the entry and what's coming up next. So if they need to quote for a job and they haven't done it within, say, 7 days of them getting the inquiry, then it sort of turns red or amber. So it enables them to manage their workflow and hopefully chase them up when things aren't being done on time and stuff like that. Obviously there's a search at the top, so they can search for jobs, different projects. There's a calendar view. Let me just log in again. Calendar view, so they can see what's up and coming in terms of appointments, on-site meetings, that kind of thing. There's a timeline view where they can see, obviously there's only one example here, but they can see all the jobs in sequence, so they know what dates are coming up. And then there's an archive as well, so they can obviously see historical jobs and stuff like that. So if I edit one, again, it's basically an entry editor, but it's got some logic behind it in that it sends out emails automatically based on the change of status, which you just can't see, I don't think, but it's the statuses like quoted, on hold, commenced, invoiced, appointment made, that kind of thing. So it's a useful database for them to be able to control a project. So this is slightly more advanced in that it's kind of a crossover between the dashboard and uses the e-commerce functionality of Cartthrob and the notifications. It kind of ties it all together and creates a useful tool to run a business. So then, going beyond that, getting to e-commerce, obviously that's a very complicated thing, depending on what kind of site you're running. But when it does come to e-commerce, Cartthrob is our go-to tool of choice. It provides great flexibility to cater for every type of product and purchasing situation, usually right out of the box, but sometimes with workarounds or tweaking, and even some custom shipping plugins to cater for more complicated situations. But although the software is powerful, in parallel with ExpressionEngine is very capable of data manipulation, the end user experience from the point of view of the order manager or the client admin role isn't so hot. So to make life a little simpler when it comes to processing orders and controlling customer data, I've created an order management dashboard. This works in a very similar way to previous dashboards, but in slightly more depth. So if we go to the live one here, Okay. So this again shows basically orders coming in from an e-commerce site. Each row is an order, obviously. And you, on the dashboard screen, initially you can see all the basic content. So, who, name, address, the order total, how they paid, whether it was Stripe or PayPal, when the order was paid, when the order was made, the status of the order, and from there, and some notes as well. So from there, you can get a very quick overview of what orders are coming and going, and there's a search tool as well up there. You can change what you can see. If you're searching for an order from a specific person, you can find them quite easily. But it really makes managing orders a lot simpler and quicker. So, for example, this first one, if I click on View, I can view the packing sheet, which can be printed off. Shows you the products. And what I've done here is I've also built in some tools to help the workflow. So when an order comes in, I click View, I print the order, so it can go to packing. So what I'll do at that stage is I'll click Print. Now I know that order's been printed. I don't need to touch it again just yet. And that brings up some actions. So the actions here being, okay, we've packed it. The courier's picked it up. I've got a tracking number. I can put a tracking number in here. Select the courier from the drop down and click on Shipped. And that will change the status to shipped, obviously. But in doing that, we'll also send the customer an email to say, your order's on your way, on its way. And then that order will just chug down the list with time as new orders come in. So it kind of helps the workflow. It means that don't have to keep using the ExpressionEngine or Cutthrob interface. It can all be done within a custom styled dashboard to make life a little bit easier. So if we just go in and edit an order as well, again, you've got more details about the order, so you can see each product, the price they paid, how many they've ordered, things like the total price, what they pay for shipping, and then all the usual customer details. And if I wanted to add some notes on the order, I could do that, or even add items. So if they said, "Oh, I want an extra product," we can add that in as well. So hopefully that illustrates what can be done with dashboards, especially where e-commerce is concerned. And I can't say that any two e-commerce sites that I've built have been the same. They're all slightly different, and some require just something very basic, but others require a lot more detail. For example, I've got one client who we've created some reports on the dashboard which tells them who bought product X or how many of product X have been sold in a date range. So that's been quite helpful for them as well. And then from that, they can obviously target their MailChimp campaigns. So hopefully you can see what's achievable using the perhaps underutilized channel form element of ExpressionEngine, especially when hooked in with Cutthrob and other add-ons, obviously. Although I consider some of these tools as essential offerings, especially the order management dashboard for e-commerce sites, they also serve as great upsells in terms of offering clients more powerful tools to help them grow and manage their business. I've built these dashboards into website projects from the outset, but I've also added them to sites over time for retained clients. But overall, it's great to be able to expand on these standard offerings, which a lot of web designers wouldn't bother to provide. Going a few steps beyond the norm is great to help our clients, and it hopefully means they will value our services even more and want to include us as a value partner and provider. So that kind of wraps things up. I think I've included everything I wanted to cover. Please let me know if you have any questions, or I'd be happy to give you a one-to-one tour of these dashboards on a separate meeting if you wanted to. Or if you need any help creating anything similar, then I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. And there are also a couple of articles on the University which have some code in as well if you want to go and have a look at that and hopefully get you started. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Oliver.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody? I think we have some Q&A coming in. And also remember, feel free to click that share audio video button if you'd like to share your audio and video and ask a question in person. Mike asked, what are limitations to channel forms? So I guess maybe what are some limitations for channel forms, especially when creating the dashboards? What have you run into that you can't do with channel forms, etc.?
In the way that I've used channel forms so far, I've used them in quite a basic way, and I haven't even covered all of the field types yet. So I haven't really touched much in the way of grids or fluid fields or anything like that. The other limitation that I found, I guess, is the styling side of it. I've had to basically hide the channel form style sheet that is natively pulled in, and basically overwrite it with my own style sheet, because it does interfere with things like form fields and stuff like that. So it's not a deal breaker, but it's just one of those little hurdles that I've had to kind of overcome, really. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Feel free to follow up, Mike, if you have anything else. Mike also asked, do clients prefer using a front-end dashboard over editing in the CP?
Generally, yes. It does depend on the client and what their skill level is. I mean, for example, with e-commerce, that they'll have people processing orders that aren't technically minded at all, but they'll happily pack an order and ship it, and they don't want to have to deal with a lot of the hurdles that ExpressionEngine can put in the way, or some of the terminology or language. And so creating something specifically for them has been really helpful, because I can just do away with all the stuff they don't need to see, even to the point of having different member groups. An order processor might only need to see the order details. They might not need to be able to edit it or anything like that. So I think it definitely helps, depending on the level of the user and the type of company as well. Sometimes they want to have full control, and others they just want something really basic and really simple. Otherwise, they'll just get overwhelmed. So I feel it's my job to make their life simpler as well as their business more efficient, and I think these are probably a good step towards helping them do that.
Awesome. And so you mentioned members. Doug asked, what are some challenges of member management around the dashboards? What does looking out a full front-end user flow with roles, registration, forgot password, etc. look like in these types of apps?
I think that's a lot of stuff covered there. I mean, I have touched on managing member data in an e-commerce dashboard where the admin staff could edit like a customer member record. So they could change their email address that's stored on file, and their shipping address and billing address and stuff like that. It hasn't gone to the extreme of covering user registration and that kind of stuff, because that's mostly been covered on the front end website, where the customer will create their account and then go and buy some products. But I don't think there's any issue with any of that. I mean, it's just all a case of using the right add-on. So I've been using is it the user add-on from EE Harbor to edit records, member records, and they seem to integrate quite well, whether it's a dashboard or wherever it is, really. So there's quite a lot of depth to that, and there's a lot of overlap between plugins and custom code and channel forms. But putting the right part in the right place, I think, will make quite a good workflow, whether it's the front end or for a back end admin person to manage.
All right. And Carl asks, what CSS framework is being used for these front end forms?
Good question. It's basic 12-column bootstrap. I've used a little CSS overlay to take care of some of the form styling. So the form fields, it's called Pure Forms. I think if you Google Pure CSS, it will come up. It's just saves you having to worry about styling some of the form fields. But yeah, it's just a standard Bootstrap layout. Nothing complex really, nothing out of the ordinary. I haven't needed to use any more than 12 columns as yet, but sometimes if I do, maybe I'll do a double row in an entry row or something like that. But yeah, it's rare to need anything bigger than that, to be honest.
Awesome. So I'm also posting a link to a couple of Oliver's EEU articles he's put out.
Yeah, cool.
So you can check him out on the university, and there he has some code samples as well, I think, for both of these. One of those is an SEO dashboard, and one's an order management. Yeah, and he's got most, if not all, the code up there for you to look at.
It's quite light. It's quite stripped out, but it will get you started if you want to give it a go. But if you need any more help, then give me a shout. I don't think there's anything overly complex or untoward with these dashboards. It's just kind of spending the time to do it and tailoring it to the client's needs and making sure it all works nicely.
Yeah, sometimes just a little starter template is all you need to get started. Especially channel forms for me was always confusing when I first started. Just how do you display the forms and or the fields and getting all the little bits right there, especially when you get into more complex fields. But
it's yeah. I mean, I found like someone asked earlier, what were the problems? I find styling things like the grid fields and the fluid fields are a real nightmare, especially with the little icons that are supposed to be in the right place. So I've tried to avoid those, too much, where I can.
Sure.
But yeah, it's channel forms, I think, is an overlooked feature of ExpressionEngine. I think it's a really useful tool, and there's definitely a lot more that probably could be done with it, to be honest.
So I got a question from being on the EE team, and obviously we just pushed out Pro a few months ago. Do you think Pro has any place in these, like doing the dashboards differently and using Pro edit icons instead of channel forms, or do you think the channel form's still the way to go when you're doing dashboard type work like you're doing now?
I did anticipate this question, and I think the answer is it's EE Pro is great. Like, for example, on the SEO manager, where you just have very simple fields, the titles, their meta tag fields. I think it's ideal at the moment for that kind of thing. Where you're starting to work with Cartthrob and needing a bit more, financial calculations going on, where you're editing an order or needing to push out emails in response to a status change, I don't think it's suitable for that yet, but I can see that probably coming, either through EE Pro or through what Cartthrob are going to do with their order manager. So yeah, it's kind of horses for courses, really. You've got to try it and see how you get on. If you wanted to see, I did create a little screen here, if you notice time.
Yeah, sure.
To have a look. So let me bring this up. So let's have a look. So I've got Pro installed. If I switch the dock on, that should. So this is the SEO manager. If I go to the most simple one, I'm hoping. There we go. So the dock's popped up down the bottom. Now if I switch that on, there you go. So you can see all the edit icons for each of those fields. So this is raw. I haven't edited it. I haven't moved tags. I haven't changed anything. This is purely just switching on Pro, and this is how it looks. I did this about 2 hours ago. Yeah, I mean, I think it would work fine for this. I just need to kind of tidy up the layout. One thing I did find is where, like, for example, this meta title column here has an auto-generated content on the template, so it's basically just using a combination of the title, followed by the shop name. If I edit that, it doesn't at the moment insert data into the correct meta title field, if that makes sense. It just edits the title. So I probably just need to tweak how the tags are pulled in and maybe make sure I'm editing the right thing. But yeah, again, it just perhaps needs some experimentation on that, really.
Yeah, if you want to send me the code behind that, I can look into how that's being generated and the tags generated. So
Yeah, I've not read any documentation yet. I just wanted to see how it would perform out of the box. But yeah, totally. It's definitely works for simple things, but I think where you're starting to edit orders or needing to, update a total order cost if you're changing quantities, it's obviously not going to cover that kind of thing. I don't think.
Sure. All right, guys. Any other Q&A? Tom, if you're already back on here, you can go ahead and click on your audio video if you want to get ready. Any other questions for Oliver about IC360, about dashboards, about channel forums? Awesome. Oliver, thank you very much. I know people have looked forward to seeing these. We've always heard a lot about them. It's good to have you walk through them. And again, it's just one of those things where you can, do a lot of different things with ExpressionEngine. It's not just not a website builder or something like that. We've seen people create full custom apps. These dashboards are amazing. All kinds of stuff out there. So it's all about your creativity and inspiring each other, and that's why we want to do these events. We want to, have EE University continue to grow the community, so we share these ideas and get ideas and inspirations from each other. And this has been a great example today. So Oliver, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Yep. And next up, we have Tom. So I'm going to share Tom's screen here. Let him in.
Sweet.
All right. You are live, Tom. And I think everybody knows Tom. He is the owner of Packetide, and of which I'm a member of. And we are the makers of ExpressionEngine, kind of the team behind it. And Tom really serves as not only the owner, but product owner, driving force of the direction we take the products and all that. And so it's awesome to have him take some time to share with us today some tidbits on ExpressionEngine, where the brand's going, where we're going with EE and Pro. And then I think, Tom, you said you might be up for some Q&A afterwards.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm going to hop off and let you have it.
Cool. Awesome. So I don't have a presentation today, so I'm going to just kind of speak. And the hope is it's a little bit more of a intimate setting, if you will, than a conference traditionally. So I love questions. Feel free to ask them. Happy to do a live Q&A. If somebody has a question while I'm going and I can see it, I'll also try to answer it. But yeah, so I'll just give a quick update. What we've been up to specifically since 6.1 and Pro. I guess before I keep going, can everybody hear me all right? Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, so 6.1 and Pro release, that was, I'm going to guess 7 weeks ago-ish. Since then, we've had about 6 stability releases specifically. I want to call it 6.1.1 was actually a pretty big release. A lot of that, we had code froze 6.1, and we had started doing additional fixes, some small, UI UX fixes, or even additions in some regards. We try to stick to SemVer as closely as we can. There is times we'll deviate from a very hard SemVer type approach. So semantic versioning would traditionally say we're not going to add anything at all until the next release, 6.2. So where we deviate from that is often, like pulling a setting forward or a link, things like that are pretty small, if you will. So since then, we've also, specifically myself and Andy, have done some pretty deep dives around what is 6.2, 6.3, and 6.4 going to look like. And then ultimately starting to think through, kind of multi-year arcs for the product. So, if we only live in the short term, if you will, like the immediate next release or the next few months, traditionally you don't have the type of direction or foresight we feel like a product needs. So, starting to think through that end of things as well. Similarly, planning out Pro 1.1 and 1.2. So again, this is all really since the Pro and 6.1 release. And I'm gonna dive into some of the specifics around these and what we're looking to do. I'm not gonna dive into everything though. So in addition to that, on EE Harbor, I believe that as of this morning, we've done 20 add-on update releases. There's a lot more to come on this front. A lot of these are, again, stability releases, bug fixes. There was a structure version 5 release, which is a pretty big update. In addition to that, one of the things we are doing is we're rolling out a pretty big update to all add-ons, where you can basically disable the license check for MSM sites that are not using a given license. That's been a pain point for a while. And we kind of just felt like, we really need to address this. So that is an update that's coming out to basically every add-on that we have. Similarly, we're working to migrate all the documentation to the main EE Harbor site. So in doing this, we're basically going to be starting to shut down some of the other sites. We'll put redirects in place, that type of thing. The docs are going to fall in line with what we do for Charge currently. So Charge, you kind of have your documentation on the left-hand side, and then there's usually a code snippet on the right-hand side where you can like copy and paste a code sample in. We've had really good feedback on those docs specifically. It's not just in Charge, it's in a few other add-ons, but that is the direction we're heading, and that's well underway. So trying to make that as easy as possible for people to just straight up get in, get a sample, find the docs they need, and be able to run with it. So that's the goal there. In addition to that, Andy McCormick, I'm kind of going through a laundry list here, so sorry. Andy McCormick and myself have been updating some of the EE docs as a whole, specifically focusing on areas that need clarification. We're cross-linking videos and some articles from EEU as well. We've also polished up the Pro docs a good bit. And we're starting to add a lot more screenshots. So that's coming. Basically trying to make the core ExpressionEngine documentation just better and better, kind of iterate that forward in a very positive direction. So, all right, let's shift topics a little bit here. Let's talk 6.2 and 6.3, ExpressionEngine 6.2 and 6.3. So 6.2, I've been referring to it as the sprinkle release. I know it's kind of a funny name. I call it the sprinkle release basically because we really focused on a ton of small additions. I think we're over 20 small additions that are just kind of spread throughout or sprinkled throughout the entire product. Basically, these are additions that we've heard from the community that people want. They've been requested in Git, that type of thing. So we felt like, 6.2, let's just get a lot of these small additions into 6.2 as a whole. So in addition to 6.2 being the sprinkler release, if you will, it's also a pretty big security-focused release. Kind of zoom out real quick. Between the 6.0.0 release and 6.2, there's actually been a lot of security vulnerabilities that have been fixed. None of these have been a critical security vulnerability. However, just due to the sheer number that are fixed, we are actually going to mark 6.2 as a critical update for people. So you'll see that show up as red in the control panel. There is some, to be completely honest, there is some that were higher, but none of them hit a critical level. And we gauge the criticality of a given security fix, honestly, based on a calculator that HackerOne puts out. You basically put in a bunch of criteria, and it gives you a score rating, and that score rating basically falls in line with, I don't remember the exact status of it's low, medium, high, critical, something along those lines, though. But none of them hit the critical mark. So, that is a good thing. In addition to just the sheer security fixes over the arc of 6.0 to 6.2, we're also shipping 6.2 with some new password management options. So what are we doing here? We're changing the way you can set up strong passwords currently. So I'm sure many of you remember there is a option that's like requires strong password or secure password, something along those lines in the core. And then that requirement currently requires you to have like an uppercase, a lowercase, a number, and then you can use that in conjunction with the password length field to say, hey, it needs to be at least 8 characters or something along those lines. We're switching to a entropy-based system. So that's the old one, the one I just described, is much more of a checkbox, right? Like, okay, do you have an uppercase character? Yes. Do you have a lowercase? Yes. Do you have a number? Do you have a special character? Those types of things. Instead, we're switching to an entropy algorithm, if you will. So what is an entropy algorithm? An entropy algorithm basically takes the password and runs a calculation on it. It's a very simplistic calculation. It's like repeating characters brings, the ranking of your password down. Non-repeating characters brings it up. Special characters brings it up. Numbers bring it up, that type of thing. We're using an algorithm that's pretty well known on the internet. I'm sure we'll link to it. I don't have a link right here, otherwise I drop it in the discussion. But that is a pretty big change. So passwords, you're now going to be able to basically say, hey, you need to hit or be able to configure users that they have to fall into one of 4 categories, either none, which means there's literally no obligations around your password strength. Basic, good, and strong. So these 4 levels more or less fall in line with different ratings in that entropy system, if that makes sense. I do want to call out, so what if you're using the require strong password currently? That setting in the ExpressionEngine core is going to be migrated to the basic security guidelines. And it is, the basic guidelines are what used to be require strong password. So then good, it's a certain entropy level, and I think we also require a minimum of 8 characters, and then strong is 12. Similar, so okay, enough about passwords. I know I went on and on about that. We feel like it's an area we want to make sure we stay on top of with ExpressionEngine as a whole. Security and passwords is part of that equation. So similarly, hand in hand with that Pro 1.1 will ship around the same time. It's not necessarily going to be with the 6.2 release, but that's going to include multi-factor authentication. So where are we in the 6.2 release? We're pretty close. I won't give a date. We're still reviewing and fine-tuning some items, but we do anticipate it being out before the end of the new year for sure. We'd like to see it a lot sooner than that. So we are getting pretty close to shipping there. Similarly, 6.3 is also under active development. 6.3, the whole theme is really about fields. So we're aiming to add 4 new field types. In addition to that, we're going to have field group roughly around the same time. This would be Pro 1.2. Would also ship with field groups as part of Fluid and entry cloning. So that's kind of like the large stroke on, or broad stroke, if you will, on 6.3. It's really to aim for a field-centric release and to line Pro 1.2 up with that, which would include the field groups as Fluid and entry cloning. So that's where we are with 6.2, 6.3, the upcoming Pro changes, things along those lines. Beyond that, as a team, the team's been pushing hard on a lot of fronts. We're also simultaneously to all of this, we're working to tighten up a lot of different areas, whether that's the site. I know that we just pushed revisions to the searching of add-ons specifically to bring a higher relevance to those. And also, I mentioned the documentation, but also a lot of kind of little things that we're starting to look at and tighten up throughout the ExpressionEngine core. Think of the comments as well. It's an item that we're really starting to assess. So we're kind of going through and looking at items that we feel like, hey, this is just, it could be a little bit better. This should change, that should change. I know another one that we haven't concluded yet, but we're discussing how we want to handle feature requests. They're all going into GitHub right now as issues, but they're also being mixed with, what are real issues with the product. So we're having discussions around how to kind of separate those two in some regards. That's really the kind of the end of the comments that I have, or update I have prepared, just what we've been up to, what's coming in 6.2, 6.3. I don't know if there's any questions. I don't see any in the chat, and I don't know if I have access to the Q&A, but if people have questions, happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Tom. Let's see. Q&A. Edward asked, I guess I've got to approve these before they show up for everybody. Edward asked, so entry cloning would be coming in 6.2. Is that right?
Entry cloning would be a Pro feature, and that's likely going to be Pro 1.2.
All right. Doug said I missed it. What are the 4 new field types?
Yep. Didn't mention specifically the field types. I know that we're adding a range slider, a number incrementer. Have to look. We have roughly 10 that we're looking to add in a list, and I think those are the 2 that we have kind of finalized that yes, these are going to be in there. I think the other 2 are still up for discussion some. So not sure on the other 2 just yet.
All right. Jared asked, can you elaborate on what you meant by Git in 6.2?
By Git in 6.2. Not 100% sure I follow the question.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Chat, Jared, if you want to put in the chat there. maybe what else was said then? I don't remember that specifically. You said something about Git right before you dove into 6.2.
I'm sorry, I'm not ringing a bell.
Yeah.
I might just be blanking out.
Might answer your question, Jared. There's nothing with Git in 6.2.
Just to throw it out there too, if you go to PRs, pull requests on the GitHub repo, and you can sort by milestone 6.2, you can see what's slated to be included in 6.2. Some of them have been merged into a 6.2 branch as well. So there is some of that.
Neil says, any timeline on Twig support for templates?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Twig support for templates. I always hesitate to give a timeline. I'm sure people have picked up on that. I would like to see us have somewhere around the end of Q1 be able to roll that out. We'll have more conversation around Twig and how we're looking to go about adding Twig support as a whole. I'd say kind of Twig and GraphQL. So we'll have a kind of an open dialogue like we did around the cookies. When we really dive into, hey, this is our thoughts. What do people think? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are we missing? We're not trying to go about development of things like that specifically in a vacuum. So we definitely like to take the feedback from the community, hear it, dialogue on it, and with cookies, for instance, we even jumped on 3 or 4 other calls outside of the main one with people who are willing to take time and really walk through examples or pain points, those types of things. So so timeline wise, I'd like to see us having a Twig support by the end of Q1 2022. So that's 4 months roughly, something along those lines. But in all honesty, I don't know 100%.
Edward asks, will there be a way to do entry cloning with vanilla EE outside of Pro?
What I would say on that front is, I can understand why this question's being asked. Initially, we're not planning to build out entry cloning outside of Pro. I think one of the thoughts that comes to my mind when a question like this comes up is, and I'm not saying this is what you're really asking, but is every new feature or every cool thing going to be put into Pro? That's something that we try to be very mindful of, and the answer is no. Not every cool new feature or functionality will be put into Pro. There's some pretty cool ones with 6.3 and with 6.4 specifically as well that we're planning to have as part of the core. So I do kind of want to hit that one head on and just say not every feature will be Pro only. That is one that we do want to put in Pro. Our plan over time is, kind of as we raise the value that we deliver in Pro higher and higher, we would like to start rolling some of what is in Pro back into the core as well. So kind of out of Pro and into core. So that is something on our radar. At this phase, we are looking to raise the value of Pro. That is one of the items we look at, is raising the value of Pro. Again, though, similarly, somebody could create an add-on. We wouldn't try to stop somebody from having an add-on to do entry cloning. I think broad stroke, my perspective with add-ons, I think that it is good to have multiple add-ons in a given category or sector. I think it's also good to take into account bringing new add-ons and new value, if you will, to the community versus repeating something that does exist. So I know that I'm kind of speaking in abstract terms a little bit on that front. I'm kind of throwing it out there because I think it is an area that's just worth consideration. Whenever somebody's jumping into development, just thinking through, okay, is this worth developing to compete with somebody? Am I better off developing X, Y, or Z? And the answers could change based on the scenario. There is times for competition. There is times for, hey, I think that if I create this, there's something that's completely new that people haven't had, and I think it would do really well. So just kind of throw that out there for everybody too.
All right. Asan asks, what are some key sprinkle features in 6.2?
Yeah, good question. I'm going to pull up GitHub here. Some of them are closed as well because the PRs are closed, but it's a good question. I think it's worth dialoguing on. I'm looking at this screen. This is where I have, actually, no, I'm dragging my reference over here. So look at the camera. All right, 6.2. So we have a decent number of features. Some of them are community driven too, which has been awesome to see. Several bugs with the discussion forum are fixed. We are adding parse conditionals to the request module. We're adding an option to turn off the CLI. I know on the edit entry screen, when you're publishing an entry, we've changed some of the user interaction there. So when you scroll down, essentially, I can't remember everything that's sticky, but you know, the save and maybe the entry title. Andy, do you remember exactly? Basically stops scrolling with you as you scroll through the page. So it's kind of sticky on the top as you scroll down.
Yeah.
Do you remember what else is in that right there?
And specifically that UI update?
Yep.
That's what you're saying? No, I'd have to pull it up.
That's fine, no worries.
Put me on the spot there. Yeah, I know we changed a lot of it was just like little aesthetics to make it in line with the rest of the control panel. So moving like the title within the little frame there and some other pieces. Just trying to make it all more consistent and not look like it's, you know, different pages are piecemeal together. So
yep. I know the main entry screen, we changed the header area just to tighten it up, kind of better utilize that space. Honestly, why I'm saying this too, I think we should start tweeting out some of these pictures and dropping them in Slack for people to see. So we fixed some file modal overlap issues. Model generation on the command line has changed a bit. Robson did a pretty big update to the search add-on, specifically to performance. I know that there's also some changes to the grid field that are coming to make it perform better. I'm not sure we're done on that front. I think we might look into some of the performance when you get into thousands of entries there as well. Sorting the sites menu dropdown on MSM, changing the order on that is effectively to be, I believe it's alpha sorted now. Made some, I'm looking at changelog here, changing the way signatures are handled for users. We did add the sticky parameter for the edit entry screen. And similarly, you can also now search by the entry ID. I don't know why that's never been searchable in on the edit entry screen there. There's some performance improvements coming. Some changes to the menu manager. Anything else I want to call it specifically? We added a trim variable modifier. And then again, Robson added some category heading items, which is pretty cool to see. And I think that we also took care of the presets for per page, or maybe that was a pull request from somebody else. I know Doug Black also pull requested an icon to show the password when you're logging in. So we did go ahead and merge that. There's a chance if we release 6.17, that one might make it out in that. We also made changes to how cookies are handled. That was a big change in 6.1. We're further iterating on that to kind of bring it even further in the right direction, kind of giving more granular control over, which cookies are specifically classified as control panel or functional, those types of things. We may, or we're trying to figure it out. We may or may not make a change to the cross-site scripting filter. I think I mentioned that at the conference. That would fall in line with the security end of things as well. I think we have a little bit more to hash out before we're ready to do that, though. So, yeah, that's some of what's in 6.2 as a whole. I feel like I'm forgetting something else here, but
yeah, I'm looking through our list here, just trying to. It's a lot of little things to.
It is. Yep. So anything on relationships, there are, I think, 3 issues that we closed with the relationships that have been brought up. We are also looking into adding additional changes to relationships specifically to large quantities of data. So that might, yeah, we'll leave that there. I think we also made No, I don't think we've done that one yet. Never mind.
Did you mention roles on the front end? The role
No,
tags?
I did not.
Or tags.
That's right.
Yeah, being able to do role assignment on the front end.
Yep. So in 6 so far, you haven't been able to change the role a user's been assigned to on registration with the new custom tags. So that will be doable. We're being very careful about how we do that because we realize you could pretty quickly implement a security vulnerability. For instance, if you have an input field with a role in it. So it's going to be much more of a tag parameter, if I remember correctly, to set and say, okay, yep, they're going to go into this role, that type of thing. So.
Oliver asks, when will the create entry option come to Pro?
That's a great question. That's probably going to be a 1.2 or 1.3.
Yeah, that came up this morning in Slack too, I think.
Did it? So I say probably because I mentioned this in passing at the conference as well, but we have departed from a link in the dev cycles and releases. So it lets us, choose to do releases kind of more fluidly than tying them to specific dev cycles or items being completed 100%. So, but likely 1.2 or 1.3.
I think you already answered Hassan's anything on relationships, right? You mentioned a couple of things. Yep. All right. Anything else, guys? Any other questions for Tom? Okay. Paul started banging his keyboard and something came out here. I don't have an eloquent rehearsed way to ask this, but are there any plans to improve the front end channel form setup? I find them pretty easy to get working, but much harder to style properly. For one, within custom fields loop, I believe it outputs fields by their field ID and has proven difficult to set a price from order. Long question at the buzzer. I'll survive if you don't answer it. I don't think we have any plans for that. You can install Pro, Paul. No, just joking. No, I don't think we've really had a lot of feedback there on anything like this, have we, Tom?
We haven't. I can share some kind of broad stroke thoughts on it. I would love feedback on this one, actually. Sure. With the command line, we have these generators, right? You can generate a model, you can generate an add-on, you can generate a command, those types of things. Would people be interested in a generator that generated something like a channel form? So you could say like generate channel form for channel, and it would give you a template, dropped in, a folder in essence. So where my mind goes, okay, that's good to hear. Yes, if other people would like to see something like that, would love to hear it. Cool. It just gives you a starting point almost to shortcut some of the processes, the idea. Broad stroke on the channel forms. Channel forms gets interesting. Some of what you're asking, Paul, I do wonder if it could be solved either by us or somebody in the community going through the docs. And I really mean it's going through the docs and almost updating the examples. Or we could potentially create a repo or something that has examples that people could just copy and paste and use, and maybe they're pulling in like a Tailwind UI that's already pre-styled or something along those lines. So from Tailwind UI CDN, then ultimately putting in custom styles as needed or something like that. So you could actually just copy and paste and get running, that type of thing. So I think that's an option. That the reason channel forms gets interesting is, where we are kind of in the overall kind of space with EE is we're trying not to enter scopes that are just sheer code modernization right now. We do plan on getting into that. We're trying to basically build some new functionality, new value into the product before we get into a lot of code modernization. reason I mentioned that is the channel form, it's pretty ripe for code modernization as well. So broad stroke, I think there's ways to kind of summarize everything I've been saying. And sorry if I've been going on and on. There is ways that I think we could solve this with docs and examples, and pulling in fully styled examples, if you will. There is ways that we could also potentially in the near term create those generators from a command that would generate out a baseline for people to start with, and then to bring it to a whole nother level, if you will. I think we really need to start looking at code modernization. So it's a long answer, but that's kind of the broad stroke thought process on channel forms. It's a good question. I guess similarly, I'd love to ask, talked about generators for that. Would people want generators for something like channel entries tags to be able to say, hey, give me, generate a template and it's got a fully working channel entries loop. Maybe it goes into grid and relationship in grid and fields in that relationship. So you could almost have like, boom, here's your whole tag set that works for a given channel. Does that just help people get started faster? Is that of interest to anyone?
Doug wants us to do Copilot. There we go. Yeah, I think I was thinking this the other day, kind of like what Mike's talking about with blocks template code. If each of the fields had where you click a button and it would just generate a snippet for that to show you what tags to use, at least to get a basic output.
Yep.
I know to me that'd be more helpful as a developer developing the site. Just be able to grab that and input it, even without styles or anything, especially on more complex fields, especially on fluid fields. That'd be very helpful.
Solid.
Yeah, so please, I know Doug up there in the chat +1 updating the docs, that kind of stuff, and feel free, guys. We're kind of coming to the end. If you want to share audio, video, and just start hanging out, chatting about this stuff, you're more than welcome to. Anybody is welcome to pull the docs repo and make updates, and every little update helps. So, for instance, one thing that I was looking at, I was talking to Tom, is we don't have a lot, or in my opinion, enough screenshots in the docs. I know that makes it harder as we update versions to have to go back and update, but I think it's good when you're looking at settings to be able to see what the setting looks like. So when you're looking at the docs, you're making sure you're looking at the right thing in the control panel, especially for new users. So even things like that, like if you just see, hey, here's one page that I can go make some screenshots and add it to the docs, that's a huge help to the community and to the the project as a whole. So feel free anytime to grab that. And we have articles on EEU about contributing to the docs. And I think within the docs itself and the README file, there's information on that. Happy to get you started with that. Happy to help you out if you're interested in doing any little bit in there.
One other quick item on updating the docs. At the bottom of every page, when you're looking at the documentation, there's a button that says edit this page. If you click that button, it will literally bring you to that page in the docs. And if you go to edit mode, you can edit it and you can just hit save and it'll say like, do you want to create a PR? And you just hit yes. It's like really simplistic to do. You don't have to build the docs, things like that. If you're getting into a lot of changes, pulling the docs down, building them, that type of thing is definitely worth doing. But if you're just like, hey, a little bit of clarification here, straight up plain text would be awesome. Just go ahead, hit that button, make the change, and hit the create PR. You don't have to, pull down the Git repo or anything. It just handles it all for you. So makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else? Let's see. Paul just posted an example of his question, his channel form question. in e-conference on Slack, so we can review that. Thanks, Paul.
Awesome.
We're all clicking the edit docs button.
Perfect.
All right, I'll expect those PRs for the docs by the end of the day, so that'd be great.
Similarly, just to throw it out there, with 6.2, being the sprinkle release, if you will, if there's small feature additions or a fix or anything like that anyone wants to get in, this is a great release to just go ahead and do a PR for, and we'll review it and take it into account. And a lot of the items in this release are community edition, so feel free.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we're trying to do is provide the resources. ExpressionEngine is an open source project. It's a community project. I know we're the main drivers behind it, but it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't always have to be that way as far as the development goes. So, feel free if you guys want to work on a feature and jump in there and try to put something in there that you want, and we'll review it. You probably want to ping the team first before you work for 3 weeks on something, though, but just to make sure it'll get approved. Yeah, right. Yeah, Oliver. I thought Tom was going there too. As a project manager, there's nothing I like more than unplanned work right before a release. So, yeah, the community can add more features. Our team, Tom. All right. Anything else, guys? Any other questions for Tom? All right. Well, definitely, there's multiple ways to, first of all, thank you, Tom. Thank you for spending some time this morning and doing that. That's much appreciated.
Absolutely.
And thank you for the leadership you provide for us in the community, for the transparency and all that. So,
absolutely.